Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. Every country, at least democratic country, goes with a constitution. And the constitution is supposed to be sacred. And when any part of the country, a province, a state, acts in a manner that is not acceptable, it gives rise to certain apprehensions. And this is what's exactly happening. The situation becomes worse. Confusion is worse than confounded when the head of the federal government gives tacit acceptance to that patently unconstitutional act. Legault, the premier of Quebec, is facing re-election next year. And his top priority is to protect the English language. There's no harm in that, as he himself admitted last week in a post he wrote. It is utmost duty. And that's what's included in the letter he recently sent to President Justin Trudeau. He requested Justin Trudeau to support an unusual clause in the new bill he's introduced, Bill 96. And this bill is a proposed law to strengthen the province's Charter of French language, that is Bill 101. So two bills are there, Bill 101 to strengthen the language and Bill 96 to strengthen the same thing, but with a other thing. And when we come to the bill, we'll see how that attacks the basic constitution situation and how it is in fact a first attempt at breaking up the confederation, because that lays down the guidelines and actually a toolkit for the other provinces to follow. If this bill is passed as it is, without being challenged in the courts, and the people accept it, the premiers of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba would be fully justified in going ahead with similar acts. And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau gave tacit acceptance and consent when he said that Quebec can unilaterally amend the constitution to advance its plans to bolster the use of French. And that is disputed by most of the constitutional parties. I also say that this proposal cannot be by the province. They can only recommend, and the final decision has to be taken by the parliament. In its first comment, since the announcement of the Quebec's most notable language policy, Trudeau said that the province can amend part of the constitution to underscore that it's a nation and that its official language is French. Now, if you accept one component of a federation to be a nation, that strikes at the very root of the word nation and is in fact a precursor to encourage vociferous, disparate tendencies which strike at the root of nationalism, patriotism. If Quebec is a nation, so is Ontario, so is Manitoba, so is British Columbia, so is Alberta, and so on. Secondly, the official languages as per the constitution are two. It's a bilingual country, French and English. This bill basically negates the constitution by saying that its official language is only French. Now, if that is only French, what obligates Ontario, British Columbia, or any other province from saying, well, look, their national language is only English. I go further. This can go on further, and the municipalities can say, well, our national language is neither English nor French. It is the majority of the people, say in Brampton, speak Punjabi. Majority of the people in Richmond Hill speak Chinese, Mandarin. So the language, official language in Richmond Hill should be Chinese. In Brampton, it should be Punjabi. In Mississauga, it should be Urdu. The thing, my examples can be multiplied ad infinitum, but the main concern is that can a province, and by implication, then a municipality, declare their own national language? They can say we can have an official language, but then, since it's a bilingual country, the translation would be there. The parliamentary approval would have to be required, and a Quebec decision, that when Quebec said that they are going to pass it, and the Prime Minister agrees, the very fact that the unilateral action is neither constitutional nor acceptable from the point of view of logic and reason. Under Bill 96, Quebec wants to unilaterally insert two clauses into Canada's constitution. And both clauses strike at the root of a nation. The first is Quebecers form a nation. As I said already, Quebecers don't form a nation. It's Canadians who are a nation. When you go, your passport is not that of Quebec, it's of Canada. And in case Quebec is a nation, so are the other provinces. Second, French shall be the only official language of Quebec. It is also the common language of the Quebec nation. The only language, when you say only language, that means all other languages, the use would be unconstitutional and illegal. Don't you get the feeling that Quebec Premier has just baited a political trap for Trudeau? And Trudeau had the constitutional hat, is walking a very narrow, thin road. By giving his tacit approval, he has done damage to himself and to the country and to the constitution which he has taken an oath to uphold. Now, if these bills are met with approval and there is a steady appetite for tougher language laws, and Bill 96 delivers what most of the Quebecers, the French speaking, want. And then it tightens commercial sign rules, increases fines, sets quotas for how many non-English speakers can enroll in an English class, language class. Say you are coming from where African is a language, or Chinese is a language, then all of you cannot enroll in French language. And then French shall not only be the language of government, but it shall be the chief language of work in businesses with more than 24 employees. The current benchmark is 50. So if you are having 25 employees, you can use other languages, but if it's more than 25, then only French has to be used. Now, to ensure that the businesses are complying, the new law forces them to give language inspectors access to the work computers. Now, here's the privacy section. A, privacy of the person who is working on a computer. He might have put something. Then the privacy of the business. Most of the work of the business is very confidential. There can be patents, there can be technical secrets, there can be 101 things. And these language inspectors would be inspecting the work computers and all other electronic devices pertaining to data Purpose to verify, examine, process, copy, and print out such data. So they don't even look at it. They can take a printout, they can copy it, and who knows, they'll sell it to some competitor. Now, what about the immigrants? The new immigrants will be given a 6 month grace period during which they can communicate with the government in English. But after 6 months, they have got to do so in French only. So that concept, which is happening in other provinces, that the government provides the translators and interpreters, would not be valid. English for the first 6 months, and then French. And if you don't know these languages, then you lose practically everything, all connectivity, all connections. And then the bill also supersises an already hefty language bureaucracy. Quebec is possibly the only province in Canada, and only exception, I would say, in the world. It has a cabinet position minister, then there's a minister for the French language, there's a deputy minister, and there's a complete department. A new French language commissioner would be appointed, and he or she would have extraordinary powers to investigate the use of French in the civil service. It will be up to the Quebec voters to decide whether this extension of the government probe into their lives is really in their best interest. It is not. As I said, you have a small business and your computers, your electronic devices are subject to that. And who knows? The next step can be an administrative order that even if you are having a retail store, you cannot use any language except French. And your subjects, your matters, and even your bank accounts are subject to scrutiny by the language inspectors. So a new set of investigators is being created. And your privacy, your fundamental rights are being destroyed. And along with the premier, I hold the prime minister equally responsible. The plan to amend the constitution is a different story. That's the second part. It will affect the entire country, as I said earlier. It will set a provincial precedence, and that's not a welcome sign. Already there are demands for the Western Canada to secede and set up an independent country because there have been injustices toward provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan. Each provincial legislature has a legal power to unilaterally amend some part of the constitution, but they are only pertaining to certain narrow issues affecting only their province. Here, the effect would be pervasive all over the country. Secondly, even in those cases, additional consent from Parliament is needed to amend any amendment, and that relates to the use of English or French language within a province. What the Legault government uh, is doing and is very much trying to do is to change the status of French and English in the province via other parts of the bill. And Bill 96 says this constitutional amendment does nothing of the sort. It merely adds two sub-clauses deep in the bowels of the Constitution Act of 1867. 1867 was the Constitution Act. And oh, by the way, in the part of the law that covers and provincial rulers. For the premier, adding the clause is a symbolic political act. And the purpose to unite the Quebecers and increase their collective pride. He forgets to mention that it would secure his political fortune for the near future. As having Ottawa or the rest of Canada to block the move or even question it, He says that if the amendment goes through, if he wins, it's a win-win situation for him. If Ottawa opposes it, then he says that our French pride, our Quebec pride is injured. And if Trudeau agrees and Trudeau pass the buck and the political danger, then Quebec is successful. And the seeds of division of the country have been sown. This is not a fight over symbols. Let's be very clear. It's a textual change which can mean real change. You see, a textual change is very, very important because that's a precursor to the new trends that can be disastrous. The Constitution is the fundamental law of the land. Every word in the Constitution matters. There is no guarantee that these proposed clauses won't someday be interpreted by the courts as having an effect on the minority language rights in the Charter of Rights and Freedom. If that's the only language, then as I said, by implication, why not for the other provinces and why should it not percolate to the municipalities? Thus, it's the whole country. As a matter of fact, from the constitutional point of view, even if it's a federal government, no provincial government can unilaterally by itself draw politically beneficial language into constitution where they feel like it is not beyond the mind when this amending formula was conceived. Every constitution can be amended, and in the constitution is embedded the process. And what this government is doing, and the prime minister is agreeing with it, is destroying that process. In law, we say due process of law. There is a due process of the constitutional amendment as well. Now, would, by implication, Jason Kenney and the Alberta government president, conservative government, not like to insert a clause saying that hydrocarbon extraction is an essential Albertan value? Or Yukon can say that they have full rights to have trade with other persons and have an open, since their population is less, an open immigration not subject to the rules of the federal government. Could a future government, not declare net zero a constitutional value like Trudeau would like to do? So Ottawa should not have been that prompt enough to accept Quebec's gambit without challenge. This has created a constitutional impasse. And the federal government is damned if it goes ahead and supports him, and damned if it doesn't. One wrong statement by the Prime Minister has brought the country to the edge of precipice. You may not be understanding or comprehending, or may not even be cognizant of the danger of this extra constitutional, no, I should say patently unconstitutional power and act of the Quebec government with the consent of the Prime Minister. But this is a recipe for disaster. Sure enough, if I were in the shoes of Jason Kenney or in the shoes of Ford or in the Premier's shoes, I would like to take advantage of it for my province and say, okay, Alberta can easily say, we need. You say oil should be banned, fossil oil. For us, fossil oil is the need, and we are going to stand by it. It's a basic essential. And federal law or no law is not relevant. Ontario can say, look here, we have our own issues and we will go ahead with them. So you are sowing the seeds of disintegration and of the division of the Canadian values, Canadian system. I pity and rue when the federal government and the provincial government have acted in a manner which is prejudicial to the future of the country. Anybody listening? I don't think so. Because there has been no reaction as yet, either from the Conservatives or from the NDP, or even from the enlightened Liberals. All seem to have gone into a state of coma. You see, there was an excellent play, Juno the Peacock. Here I cry for the country to which I came, because this country, the way it's going, as I said, I can only pity the country and the people, and I just look out of the window, look at the horizon, and rue what would happen to this beautiful country if the politicians have their dirty ways. Thank you.